Okay, guys, we are going to discuss the topic that is laser, and the topics which are to be covered in this chapter, which is laser, are the properties of laser, then spontaneous and stimulated emission. What is mean by spontaneous and stimulated emission? What is mean by population inversion? Then what is mean by pumping mechanism? Then important constituents of any laser system, then 3-level and 4-level laser system, then semiconductor laser. There are two types of semiconductor lasers. One is homojunction, the other one is heterojunction semiconductor laser. Then the CO2 laser, which is a gas laser, while this semiconductor laser is a solid state laser and this CO2 is a gas laser. Then the applications of laser, such as laser welding, then removing blockages from the coronary artery, and holography, which is a recording technique in which we can have a three-dimensional recording of a three-dimensional object. So holography, in which there are two processes which are involved, that is recording of the image and reconstruction of the image. Okay, so what is mean by laser? This laser is a short form, or it is known as acronym for the term that is light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. So each letter of the word, first letter of the word, it comprises the word that is laser. So L from light, A from amplification, S from stimulated, E from emission, and R from radiation. It makes the word laser. All of you are aware with the properties of laser and its various applications in your day-to-day life also. So what does laser makes different than an ordinary source of light, such as the light which is emitted from any incandescent lamp, or you may simply say light which is emitted from a torch, or the light which is emitted from a bulb, or light which is emitted from a tube. This laser is altogether different from all such light sources because of the specific properties which are associated with the laser, such that this laser is highly monochromatic in nature. You know what is mean by the term monochromatic? Monochromatic means having single wavelength. So the laser light is highly monochromatic in nature as compared to that of the ordinary light. Ordinary light means I refer to this, the source of light which is emitted from any bulb or tube light and so on. So that light I call it as the ordinary light. So in case of ordinary light, this ordinary light is polychromatic in nature. So poly means many and chroma stands for color. So different colors are due to different wavelengths, and it means that this ordinary light or white light is polychromatic in nature because there is a range of wavelengths which are present in this ordinary light. While since the laser is highly monochromatic in nature, so you might be knowing about the laser that it consists of specific color, one particular color, such as red laser or green laser, and so on. So the laser is highly monochromatic in nature and it is of one specific color due to this property, that it has the high degree of monochromaticity as compared to that of the ordinary source of light. Then laser is highly unidirectional in nature. So the laser light, it travels in only one direction, and therefore it is having a property that it is highly unidirectional in nature. And due to this property, laser can travel larger distances without attenuation, and therefore laser can be used to even calculate the distance between the celestial bodies. That is, you can calculate the distance from Earth to Moon by impinging a laser beam from the Earth onto the surface of Moon, and when it gets reflected back from the surface of Moon again onto the surface of Earth, by knowing the time of light and knowing the velocity of light, that is 3 into 10 raised to power 8 meter per second, we can calculate the distance between the celestial bodies, that is distance between two planets, because of this property of laser, which is highly unidirectionality. While if you look at the ordinary source of light, then in case of ordinary light which is emitted from a torch, if there is a torch and if there is an ordinary light which is coming from this torch, then in this case light travels a certain amount of distance, and after that this light waves they get spread, and due to the spreading of light waves, here the energy is attenuated, and therefore such ordinary source of light is not unidirectional in nature, while laser is highly unidirectional in nature. Then the laser is highly bright. The brightness of this laser beam is very high. Similarly, the intensity of the laser beam is also very high. So it is highly intense and highly bright, and it is also highly coherent in nature. Coherence, we have seen that if the phase difference between the two light waves, if it is either zero, if the phase difference between the two light waves, if it is either zero or constant, if the phase difference between the two light waves, if it is either zero or constant, then we say that the two light waves are coherent in nature. Now in case of laser, there are two types of coherences. One is called as the temporal coherence, and the other one is called as a spatial coherence. And in case of laser, both the coherence exist together, that is temporal coherence as well as the spatial coherence. It exists in case of laser. So what is mean by temporal coherence and spatial coherence is, in case of a wave, suppose if this is one wave which is propagating along some x direction, and let us choose 2 points on this wave. Say suppose this is point P and this is suppose point Q on this wave. Then if I measure the phase angle at point P as phi 1, and if I measure the phase angle at point Q as phi 2, then the phase difference between these two points selected on a single wave which is propagating along some x direction will be equal to phi 1 minus phi 2, and I measure these phase angles at any instant of time, say suppose t. What is this happening? Suppose I measure the phase angles at point P and Q on a wave propagating along x direction. At point P, if the phase angle is phi 1, at point Q, if the phase angle is phi 2. So the phase difference between these 2 points will be phi 1 minus phi 2. Then at any later instant of time, say t dash, again these are my points of observation, they are moving along the wave, and at any later instant of time t dash such that t is not equal to t dash, if I measure the phase angles again at point P and Q, and if they are suppose phi 1 dash and phi 2 dash, and if I found that this phi 1 minus phi 2 is exactly equal to that of phi 1 dash minus phi 2 dash, what does it mean? What is this phi 1 minus phi 2? It is the phase difference. It is the phase difference between which 2 points?
P and Q.
P and Q. So this is the phase difference between the points P and Q. So if I measure the phase difference phi 1 and phase difference phi 1 minus phi 2 at any instant of time t, and at any other later instant of time, that is t dash, if I again measure the phase difference between P and Q, and if these two phase differences are equal, what does it mean? Where this t is not equal to t dash, if t is not equal to t dash, यानी ये मैंने 1 सेकंड पे टाइम 1 सेकंड जब था तब मैंने ये phase difference measure किया था. Now when the time is suppose 5 seconds, so after 5 seconds I measure the phase difference and again I measure the same phase difference which exists between P and Q, it means that the phase difference between the 2 points of observation on a wave, it remains constant. So this phase difference will remain constant and it is independent of time, isn't it?
Yes,
Whatever
sir.
be the
Yes,
time, whatever be the time period, so after 10th of a second, after 10th second of time, if you again measure the phase difference and if it comes out to be constant, then what does it mean? It means that the phase difference between the 2 points of observation on a wave, it remains constant, which is independent of time. So whatever be the amount of time, the phase difference between the points of observation will remain constant, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So such type of coherence is called as a temporal coherence. Such type of coherence is known as temporal coherence. It is known as temporal coherence. While if I have suppose now suppose I have number of waves propagating along this x direction. All of them they are having the same phase, all of them they are having the same amplitude, all of them they are traveling in the same direction. Now now I do not mark this point as observation Q. Now let us consider one point on one wave as P, another point on another wave as Q. Suppose I have two waves. So in practice I have large number of waves, but for simplicity I am considering that I have two waves suppose. So on these two waves, if I mark these 2 points of observation as P and Q, and if I measure that this phi 1 is the phase angle at this point P, while phi 2 is the phase angle at point Q. So if I measure these phase angles, that is phi 1 and phi 2 at these points P and Q on two different waves at any instant of time t, then the phase difference between the points P and Q, which are the points of observation on two different waves, will be equal to phi 1 minus phi 2. So this phi 1 minus phi 2 will be the phase difference between the two waves on which I have 2 points of observation as P and Q on two separate waves propagating along same direction, having same amplitude and same phase. At any later instant of time t dash, where again t is not equal to t dash, if I measure the phase angles at point P and Q, and if they are phi 1 dash and phi 2 dash, so that phi 1 dash minus phi 2 dash will be the phase difference between them. And if I observe that again here t is not equal to t dash, but this phi 1 minus phi 2 will be exactly equal to phi 1 dash minus phi 2 dash, what does it mean?
Is constant.
It means again that the phase difference between the 2 points of observation on two different waves, it remains constant and it is independent of time. Whatever be the time, the phase difference between number of waves, it remains constant. So such coherence is known as spatial coherence. SPATIAL. So look at the spelling. It is spatial coherence. It is something which is related to space. So here in a space there are large number of waves, and all such waves they are in phase with each other. The phase difference between all such large number of waves, it remains constant. Such coherence is called as spatial coherence. And the temporal coherence means there is a phase difference which remains constant between the two or more number of points on the single wave. So such coherence is called as temporal coherence. And in case of laser, both type of coherence exist, that is temporal coherence as well as spatial coherence, and that is why laser beam is highly coherent in nature. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So it is not special, like the spelling this SPECIAL. This is not spatial. It is spatial. So you may pronounce it as spatial coherence. So there exists a spatial coherence and temporal coherence in case of laser, and therefore laser beam is highly coherent in nature. So these are the five typical properties associated with laser, that it is having high degree of monochromaticity, it is highly unidirectional, highly bright, highly intense, and highly coherent in nature as compared to that of ordinary source of light, that makes the laser something different. Then
Excuse me, sir.
yes,
Some students are waiting in the lobby. Please let them in.
okay. So as I told you that in the name of laser, this laser is a short form for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, and therefore in order to obtain the laser we require that the type of emission should be the stimulated emission of radiation. So we require that the type of emission should be the stimulated emission of radiation. So this type of emission is required in order to obtain the laser, obviously, but you should know what is mean by spontaneous emission, and then we will see what is mean by stimulated emission, and then you will come to know that why spontaneous emission is needed in order to obtain the laser. So in order to understand this, first we consider the spontaneous emission. Now in case of atoms, ions, molecules, electrons, etc., you know that there are different energy levels, and all such energy levels are decided by a set of 4 quantum numbers, that is the principal quantum number n, orbital quantum number L, then magnetic orbital quantum number ml, and the spin magnetic quantum number ms. So these are the 4 quantum numbers which decide the energy state of atoms, ions, molecules, and electrons. Then in case of atoms, you know that the lowest energy level is known as the ground energy state. Now let us consider that here E1 is the lowest energy state, which is known as the ground energy state, while here this E2 is a excited energy state or higher energy state. So this E2 is a excited state or a higher energy state. Now tell me, what is the natural tendency of atoms, to occupy the lowest energy state or to occupy the highest energy state? What is the natural tendency of atoms? Hello?
To occupy highest energy.
Highest energy.
To occupy the highest energy state. Why the atoms form bonds, various kinds of bonds, covalent bond, ionic bond, metallic bond? Why there is a formation of bonds takes place in case of atoms? To achieve stability. What is mean by stability? What is mean by stability? What is the energy? What is the energy of atom in a stable state, and what is the energy of atom in excited state?
Low energy.
Excited state is
Maximum.
it absorbs and excited state is released.
What is the natural tendency of atoms? To remain in the ground state or to remain in the excited state?
Ground state.
The natural tendency of atoms, ions, and molecules, electrons, is to occupy their position in the lowest possible energy state, and in order to achieve their position in the lowest possible energy state known as the ground energy state, they form various kinds of bonds in order to achieve the stable configuration, and thereby they achieve their position in the lowest possible energy state. Atoms do not want to go into the excited energy state. Now let us consider that there is one atom which is present in this ground energy state. So what is the lifetime of, I can say about the ground energy state for the atom? For which amount of time this atom can spend its time in the ground energy state if not disturbed? Hello?
Infinity time.
Infinite amount of time, because that is the natural tendency of atom to remain in the ground energy state. So this atom, unless and until it is disturbed, it remains in this ground energy state for infinite amount of time. So the lifetime of an atom in this ground energy state is infinite. Lifetime of the atom in the ground energy state is infinity. But if such an atom is triggered by an external photon having energy of the order of E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu, as photon, according to Planck's quantum hypothesis, you know that energy associated with photon is E is equal to h nu, where h is Planck's constant and nu is the frequency of the photon. So if I incident an external photon having energy of the order of E2 minus E1, where this E2 is the energy associated with higher energy state or excited energy state, and E1 is the energy associated with the ground state. So if this atom is triggered by such a photon having energy of the order of E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu, then this atom will absorb this energy from the incident photon, and as soon as this atom absorb energy from this incident photon, it will make a transition from the ground state to the excited state. So as soon as this atom makes the transition from ground state to the excited state, will it remain in this excited state for long duration of time?
No.
Will this atom remain in this in this excited state for a longer duration of time, that is infinite amount of time?
No.
No. Why?
No.
Because as soon as it goes to the excited state, how is the state of the atom? Is it stable in this excited state, or it is stable
No,
in the
it
ground
is-
state?
It is
Stable in ground state, not stable in
It is stable in the ground state. So as soon as this atom goes to the excited state, so as this atom in this excited state is very unstable, it will spend a very little amount of time in this excited state, that is only of the order of 10 raised to power minus 8 seconds, and immediately this atom will fall back to the ground energy state. Immediately it will fall back to the ground energy state, and as soon as this atom makes a transition from E2 to E1, it will release the photon which it has absorbed initially for the transition. So when this atom makes a transition from E2 to E1, it will release this energy, that is E2 minus E1, again in the form of photon as h nu. So this type of emission of a photon this emitted photon is called as spontaneously generated photon, or this type of emission is called as a spontaneous emission. Why it is called as a spontaneous emission? How is the process? What amount of time it takes to complete the emission process?
10 raised to minus 6 seconds.
10 raised to minus 8 seconds. Atom is initially present in the ground state. As soon as it is bombarded by the incident photon, it absorbs this energy, makes the transition to the higher energy state. It remains in this higher energy state for a very short duration of time, 10 raised to minus 8 seconds, immediately fall back to the ground state. During this transition, it gives a photon, and therefore this process completes within a period of 10 raised to power minus 8 seconds, which is a very small amount of time, and hence this emission is called as spontaneous emission. Is it clear what is meant by spontaneous emission?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, for this atom to fall back to the ground state, does it require any external help?
No.
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 It comes
No.
on
No.
its own from the excited state to the ground state. It comes from it comes from the excited state to the ground state by its own, because of the fact that it satisfy the quantum selection condition. So as I said you earlier, that each energy level is decided by a set of 4 quantum numbers, that is n, l, ml and ms. So there are a set of 4 quantum numbers associated with this ground energy, as well as there is a set of 4 quantum numbers, that is n, l, ml and ms, which are associated with the excited energy state, which is E2. So in order to satisfy this transition, that this atom should fall back by its own, there should be a quantum selection condition that this delta L, it should be equal to either +1, it should be either 0 or +1 and -1. Means if the difference between the orbital quantum number L between the two energy levels, that is E1 and E2, if the difference between these two orbital quantum numbers, if it is either 0 or if it is either plus or -1, then such atom fall back by its own. It does not require any external help and gives out the emission, which is called as the spontaneous emission. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the photons which are obtained in such spontaneous emission, they are altogether different in different, they are oriented in different directions, as well as all of these photons which are produced in such spontaneous emission, they are not having the same phase, they are not having the same direction, and therefore such spontaneous emission is not useful for obtaining the laser. Now why they are random in phase and random in direction? Because one atom will gives out a one photon at a one time, then after some time, if another atom is excited, it will go to the excited state, fall back to the ground energy state, and will give out a photon after some amount of time. So if the number of photons are obtained at different intervals of time, then you know the relation between the frequency and time period, that frequency is reciprocal of time. So if we obtain the number of photons at different time intervals, then their frequencies and their phase difference will be different. Also, they are oriented in all possible directions randomly. There is no control on it. So the photons which are obtained, they can move in all possible directions randomly, and they are emitted either in this direction or this direction and any other direction. And therefore the light or the photons, they are not in phase with each other. Also they are not in phase with each other, they are not in same direction, and therefore such photons are not unidirectional in nature, they are not coherent in nature, and therefore such spontaneous emission is not useful for obtaining the laser. But this spontaneous type of emission is obtained in case of our ordinary light, such as incandescent lamps, which are used in our domestic use or domestic appliances, such as tube lights, bulbs and so on. So the type of emission in case of tube lights and bulbs is the spontaneous type of emission. While there is another type of emission called as a stimulated emission of radiation, and this type of emission can be possible, was suggested by scientist, that is Einstein. So Einstein proposed that the other type of radiation, that is called as a stimulated emission of radiation, is also possible, and he proposed this stimulated emission of radiation. Now why we call Einstein as great? Because he proposed this stimulated emission of radiation in roughly the year about 1924, around 1924. He proposed that this type of emission is also possible, and the first practical laser which is developed by using this concept of stimulated emission of radiation was built by a scientist whose name was Maiman, and that first practical laser was a ruby laser, and this ruby laser was a solid state laser, and this was built in a year which is 1960. So just look at the time period. The idea which is proposed by Einstein about the stimulated emission of radiation in the year 1924, this was been practically implemented in the year which is 1960, and the first practical laser which was developed by scientist Maiman was the ruby laser in the year 1960. So you can imagine that roughly there is a time period of 40 years to actually develop a practical application out of his idea. So that is why Einstein is great. Okay, so this was about the background of this stimulated emission of radiation. Now what actually this stimulated emission of radiation means? Now again here let us consider that there are two energy levels. So here E1 is a ground energy state, and you know that the lifetime of atoms in this ground energy state is infinite, while this E2 is a excited energy state, but I name this excited energy state as metastable state. I am not mentioning it as excited state, but yes, it is higher energy state as compared to that of the ground energy state, but I name this as metastable state. Now what is mean by metastable state is the lifetime of this metastable state for the atoms to remain in this metastable state is quite large as compared to the lifetime of atoms in the excited state. Now just compare the lifetimes. Here the lifetime of atom in the excited state is of the order of 10 raised to power minus 8 seconds, while here the lifetime of atom in the metastable state is of the order of 10 raised to power minus 3 seconds. So this time period is quite large as compared to this time period, though it is less. 10 raised to power minus 3 seconds is still a very less amount of time, but it is 10 raised to power 5 times more. It is 10 raised to power 5 times more than that of the 10 raised to power minus 8 seconds, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So if the lifetime of the atom in the higher energy state is quite large, like 10 raised to power minus 3 seconds as compared to 10 raised to power minus 8 seconds, then we call this energy state as a metastable state. So meta means it is partially stable, partially not. Here this is excited state, so it is totally unstable. The atom is totally unstable in this excited state, while it is completely stable in the ground state. While here in metastable state it is partially stable and partially not, and therefore it is called as metastable. Not exactly stable, but it is metastable. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It is not that much highly unstable as that of the excited state, but at the same time it is not completely stable. Here the lifetime is not infinite, but at the same time lifetime is not very small, it is quite large, and therefore it is called as a metastable state. So what Einstein proposed, that by any means if we can bring the atoms from the ground state to the metastable state such that the atoms will spend more time in this metastable state. So if the atoms remain in this metastable state, if the atoms remain in this metastable state for much longer duration, then we can increase the population of atoms in the metastable state E2, and these atoms, when they are brought to the metastable state, they cannot make a transition like this. These atoms, they cannot make a direct transition from E2 to E1 like spontaneous emission. So they remain, or they spend more time in this metastable state, and that time is of the order of 10 raised to minus 3 seconds. So here just look at the number of atoms in the ground state. Initially the atoms are present in the ground state, But all these atoms, if by any means, if they are lifted to the metastable state, how is the population of atoms now?
Less.
Less in what?
X. Even.
If there are, suppose earlier there are 4 atoms which are present in E1, then by any means, if we can bring these 4 atoms from E1 to E2, so what is now the number of atoms in E1?
0.
0. And what is the number of atoms in E2? 4.
4.
4.
So all the atoms, if they are brought to the metastable state, which is E2, so that the population of atoms, that is N2 in energy state E2, if it is more as compared to the population of atoms N1 in energy state which is E1, now these atoms, like before, like spontaneous emission, they cannot jump directly from E2 to E1 without any external help. So without any external help, they cannot jump directly. And the reason for this is, again, I told you that each energy state is decided by a set of 4 quantum numbers, that is N, L, ML and MS. This energy state is also decided by a set of 4 quantum numbers, that is N, L, ML and MS. And the quantum selection condition is delta L, that is the difference between the orbital quantum number of the 2 energy states. It should be either 0 or it should be either plus or minus 1. But if this, in this case, this condition is not satisfied. So the difference between the orbital quantum number L between the 2 energy levels is such that it does not satisfy this quantum selection condition. That is, the difference between them is not either 0, not even plus or minus 1, and therefore these atoms are trapped in this energy level for some duration of time, and that duration of time is 10 raised to power minus 3 seconds. So that is why this state is called as a metastable state. Is it clear what is mean
Yes,
by
sir.
metastable
Yes,
state?
sir.
Yes, sir.
So now if I bombard these atoms, by an external photon, so since I am using this photon in order to bombard these atoms, and therefore it is called as a triggering photon. So I am using this photon as a trigger. So it is called as a triggering photon, or it is also called as a stimulating photon. It is called as stimulating photon. It is called as stimulating photon. Now what will happen to these atoms if I bombard all these atoms by an external photon having energy of the order of E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu? Then all these atoms, they will immediately satisfy the quantum selection condition, that is delta L is equal to plus and minus 1 or 0, delta L is equal to 0 or plus minus 1. And as soon as all these atoms, they satisfy this quantum selection condition, then all these atoms, they will jump at the same time from metastable state to the ground state, and during each transition it will gives out a photon. So this atom, when it jumps from E2 to E1, suppose I name these atoms as 1, 2, 3 and 4, then when this atom 1, when it jumps, it emits a photon. When atom 2 jumps, it also emits the photon. When atom 3 jumps from E2 to E1, it also will emit a photon. When atom 4 will jump from E2 to E1, it will also emit a photon. So how is the jumping of all these atoms? It is simultaneous. All of them, they jump at the same time from E2 to E1. So how is the emission of all these photons? Are these photons emitted at the same time or at different time intervals?
At the same time.
Same time.
All these photons are emitted at the same time interval. What is the energy of each photon which is emitted during this transition?
H nu.
Huh? What is h nu? What is the amount of energy? अरे just compare ना here. कितनी energy होगी? If this atom with energy E2, if it is jumping from E2 to E1, what is the amount of energy?
E2 minus E1.
E2 minus
E2
E1.
minus E1. इतना टाइम लगता है क्या? So the energy associated with this photon is E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu. What is the energy associated with this photon? Is it different?
E2 minus E1.
E2 minus
Again, it
E2
is E2
minus-
minus E1 is equal to h nu. What is the energy associated with this photon?
Same.
Again, E2 minus
E2
E1 is
minus-
equal to h nu. What is the energy associated with this photon? It is E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu. What does it mean? How is the energy associated with all these photons?
Is same.
It is
Same.
same. The energy
Same.
associated with all the photons is same. As compared to what? As compared to the incident photon. How is the energy of incident photon? What is the energy of the incident photon or triggering photon?
E2 minus E1.
E2 minus
is
It
equal
is
to H.
E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu. The energy of the emitted photon is also E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu. So the energy of all the emitted photons is exactly similar to that of the energy of the incident photon. Then look at the direction of all these photons. All these photons are emitted in the same direction as that of the incident photon. This is the direction of the incident photon, and all these emitted photons, they are having the same direction as that of the incident photon. So all these photons which are obtained in such transition, they are having same direction as that of the incident photon. They are having same energy as that of the incident photon. They are having same phase as that of the incident photon, and therefore all such photons, they are highly coherent in nature, they are highly monochromatic in nature, and therefore such light is called as laser. Why it is called as laser? Now if you look at this as a system, and if you consider this side as the input side and this side as the output side, what do you see in the input and what do you see in the output? What is there in the input? And what is there in the output? Come on, what is it too difficult question I am asking for? Hello?
Unidirectional.
Huh? What is there in the on the input side of this system? If you imagine this as a system, any system, if you consider this as an input side, what is there on the input side?
Triggering photon.
There is a triggering photon on the input side. What do you get on the output side? What is there on the output side?
Photon.
Photons. How many photons? Large number of photons. Isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
On the output side, you get large number of photons. At the input side, you have only one triggering photon. At the output side, you have large number of photons having the same energy, same direction, same phase as that of the incident photon. So, if your output is more as compared to input, then this phenomena is called as what?
Stimulated emission.
Whenever your output is more as compared to input, if your output is more as compared to input, that phenomena is called as what? When output is more than input, if your input current is less, output current is large. What does it mean? Haven't you studied the term amplification in electronics?
Yes, sir.
बीजेटी हुआ है क्या? ट्रांजिस्टर, बाइपोलर जंक्शन ट्रांजिस्टर, बेसिक इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स में. हेलो,
Yes, sir.
so if my input current is IB, that is base current, is my input current, and if my output current is collector current, you know that collector current IC is large as compared to IB, then what I will say about this transistor? Oh, come on. If output current is more than the input current, you call it as a current amplifier. Simple. Isn't it? When the output is more than that of input, you call this as amplification or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Amplification.
So here I have large number of photons at the output side, while I have only one photon at the input side. So here there is amplification of what takes place?
Photon.
Photons. Here the amplification of photon takes place. Photon is the particle of light. It means that the amplification of light takes place, isn't it?
Yes.
Here at the input side, if I have only one photon, at the output side, if I have large number of photons, it means that amplification of photons takes place. If amplification of photon takes place, then this amplification of photon is nothing but it is the amplification of light. What is happening? So here the amplification of photons takes place, that is amplification of light takes place by which type of emission? Which type of emission?
Stimulated.
Stimulated.
It is the stimulated emission of radiation, and this stimulated emission of radiation happens due to the triggering photon, or it is called as stimulating photon. Otherwise these atoms, they cannot fall on their own to the ground state suddenly and gives the emission which is required for us, and therefore this emission is known as stimulated emission of radiation because of this stimulating photon. Because of the stimulating photon, it is known as light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, and therefore the term that is light amplification. So here the amplification of photons takes place, so it is called as light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Is it clear? What is the difference between the spontaneous emission and stimulated emission?
Yes, sir.
And why we require the spontaneous
Yes, sir.
why we require the stimulated emission to be preceded over the spontaneous emission? Because here the photons which are obtained in spontaneous emission, they are random in direction, they are random in phase, and therefore such photons are not monochromatic in nature, as well as they are not coherent in nature. So we are not using this spontaneous emission for obtaining the laser source, while here the photons which are obtained, they are having same energy, same phase, same direction as that of the incident photon, and at the same time we obtain large number of photons at the expense of a incident of a single photon, and therefore there is amplification of these photons takes place, and hence this type of emission is known as light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, and therefore we obtain the laser action by stimulated emission of radiation only. We obtain the laser action by stimulated emission of radiation. So just note down the lifetimes of the excited state and ground state. इस पे MCQ type question रह सकता है that the lifetime of ground state is infinite, lifetime of the excited state is 10 raised to minus 8 second, while the lifetime of the metastable state is 10 raised to minus 3 seconds. Then in case of laser, the type of emission required is spontaneous emission रह सकता है option में, stimulated emission रह सकता है. So it is the stimulated emission of radiation which is necessary for obtaining the laser action. Now for stimulated emission of radiation, what we require is, we require that the number of atoms in the higher energy state, it should be more as compared to the number of atoms in the ground energy state. So we require that this N2 should be greater than N1, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But normally this is the case? Is this the case under equilibrium condition? Is it the case under equilibrium condition?
No.
No.
No, sir.
So normally what happens is, normally population of atoms in the ground energy state is more as compared to the population of atoms in the higher energy state. So in equilibrium condition, N1 is greater than N2, but to achieve the stimulated emission of radiation, we require that population of atoms in higher energy state, it should be more than the population of atoms in the ground energy state. So we require this population to be inverted. So the term is known as population inversion. So according to Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution, the number of atoms per unit volume, capital N, in an excited energy level, capital E, is given by the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution law. And this Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution law is N is equal to N0 into e raised to power minus E upon kT, where this N0 is the constant, then this K is again a Boltzmann constant, T is the absolute temperature. So consider the two energy states which are E1 and E2, where E2 is greater than E1. Therefore the number of atoms according to this Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution law in ground energy state is N1 can be written as N1 instead of N. I write this as N1. This N0 is constant, so it is as it is, N0 into e raised to power. Energy corresponding to ground energy state is E1, so instead of E it will be E1, so it will be minus E1 upon kT. And similarly I can write for the number of atoms in the excited energy state, which is E2, by using the same formula. So the instead of N it will be N2, N0 will remain as it is, it will be e raised to power, instead of E it will be energy corresponding to the excited state or higher energy state, so it is E2 upon kT. So I get the number of atoms present in ground energy state as N1 is equal to N0 into e raised to power minus E1 upon kT, and N2 is equal to N0 into e raised to power minus E2 upon kT as the number of atoms in the excited state. So if you take the ratio of these two, so N2 divided by N1, that will be equal to N0, N0 gets cancelled, and it will be e raised to power minus E2 minus E1 upon kT. Now obviously this energy E2 is greater than E1, so as E2 is greater than E1, you know that energy associated with higher energy level E2 is greater as compared to the energy corresponding to the ground energy state. So as E2 is greater than E1, and therefore e raised to power minus of E2 minus E1 upon kT, it should be less than 1. So as this factor is less than 1, and therefore this N2 is less than N1. So in equilibrium condition, the population of atoms in higher energy state is less as compared to the population of atoms in the ground energy state. So the number of atoms is more in the lower energy state than that in the higher energy state. But in order to achieve the stimulated emission of radiation, we require that this population has to be inverted. So, but to increase the probability of stimulated emission, means to achieve the stimulated emission of radiation, the number of atoms in the higher energy state must be greater. It must be greater than the number of atoms in the lower energy state. So this state in which there is a larger number of atoms in the higher energy state than the lower is called as population inversion. So this is the equilibrium condition, that is N1 is greater than N2, that we have seen by using this expression, that N1 is always greater than N2 under the equilibrium condition according to the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution law. But to achieve the to achieve the stimulated emission, this population has to be inverted, that is we require that N2 should be greater than N1. It means that we need some mechanism to achieve this state of population inversion, and this mechanism is known as the pumping mechanism. So to achieve the state of population inversion, the atoms in the lower state have to be pumped to the higher energy state by providing some energy. So if I provide energy to the atoms which are present in the ground state, if I provide energy to the atoms present in the ground state, so that I can pump these atoms from ground state to the metastable state. So if I provide some energy, and then that providing energy, if I lift the atoms from ground state to the metastable state, then this mechanism is called as pumping mechanism. I am pumping these atoms from ground state to the metastable state. Now if I provide the light energy in the form of photons like this, if I trigger an incident photon onto this atom so that this atom is lifted from ground state to the excited state, so if here I am using energy in the form of photons, or if I am using the light energy to lift or to achieve the pumping mechanism, then such type of pumping mechanism is called as optical pumping. So optical pumping means simply if light or optical energy is used for achieving the population inversion, it is called as optical pumping. While if electrical excitation is used for population inversion, then such type of pumping is called as electrical pumping. Is it clear?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think we should stop here. We'll continue with this topic in next lecture. Okay. We'll stop here. You can leave the meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.